In Season 1 of Arcane, Viktor was a compelling and interesting character for the struggles of trying to help lives but fails, not due to his faults, but the world and his own mortality holding him back, causing him to become reckless in his research to the point of self-harm and accidentally killing someone, giving him a new perspective in accepting his fate, then continuing struggling or end up becoming a monster. It's incredibly dark and grounded storytelling, making it more jarring for how off the rails with his direction in Season 2, where Viktor becomes a Jesus type figure and gets reinforced with him dying and resurrecting 3 days later as the Herald of the Arcane, where he tries to focus on global domination with his marionettes. And also, there's another version of Viktor who is his future self trying to stop himself by having other people do it for him despite having the powers of time and multiverse dimension travel. This storytelling is completely disjointed and relates to nothing to Viktor in the first season. It doesn't help that his design looks nothing like the game version of Viktor to the point that many fans refer to him as Vincent. This doesn't tell a complete picture of how badly Season 2 damaged the character. Disregards to carefully crafted plans and the time poured in to setting him up. Viktor in the first season was just a sickly, humbled inventor who was seen as weak and an outsider. Through determination and hard work, manages to prove them wrong, causing to end up with Jace, and the both of them change the world with the introduction of the Hex Tech and the Portal Gates. Viktor continues to develop new technology in hopes of introducing it to the world, but gets stopped by Heimerdinger telling him it needs more time, which he doesn't have. The precious little time he gets wasted in activities of safety check and general ledgers, so Viktor decides to continue it by himself, a bit too recklessly.
Are you sure this is safe?
Of course not.
Viktor's workaholic lifestyle begins to also halt his research, causing him to pass out, waking in the hospital being told he's gonna die soon. Viktor's worldview begins to slowly shatter. The people he respected are holding him back and are suggesting to weaponize his tools with the added stress of him slowly dying, unable to change anything. We see him focus on trying to find ways to save his life, going to his old mentor for counseling, who once believed his mentor as mad but came to an understanding. He gets encouragement and a warning of his dark path Viktor will go through in the pursuit of great. He accepts, not fully understanding what it truly means. So Viktor begins to self-mutilate, offering blood rights to the Hex Core, slowly disfiguring himself but saving his body in the process. He continues this till an incident where Sky believed he was in danger and attempted to save his life, only to be consumed by the device. At this point, his whole reality just shattered, that this device meant to help people just killed someone. Viktor truly understands that this path is way too costly and begins to realize if this is what he wants, to become something like Rio, becoming an abomination, just trying to stay alive, resembling nothing what it once was. So Viktor decides to make a choice. He accepts his fate, telling Jace to destroy the device and do one final good by helping with the negotiation for peace between Piltover and Zaun. League of Legends story is completely different from Arcane. In that version, there's no specification he's sickly. He's just a normal, talented inventor who shares similarities in trying to help. In this version, by creating safety regulation for Zaun factories, leading him to gain a scholarship in Piltover. This is where he meets Jace, where the relationship is not the same in Arcane. Viktor dislikes the guy, and you can see why later, but still have mutual respect for each other's talents. Viktor continues his studies till he got called back to Zaun due to more accidents still occurring despite his efforts. This is where the character begins to change, having the realization it's not the machines at fault, but the people, the human error. This idea gets reinforced when he builds a machine golem named Blitzcrank to help Zaun, only for someone else being Stanwyck claiming credit for its work. This irrational, emotional side of humans continues when both Jace and Viktor were working on the project and helping improve the diver's suit. Due to the divers experiencing hallucination leading to many casualties, Viktor suggests a pretty reasonable idea to let the operator take control of the diver. However, Jace thought it was stupid and crazy and claiming it took away free will, even though it's the most rational thing someone can do. Like if the guy in the suit is going absolutely crazy and down in the water, best to control him before he gets himself killed. Apparently, this was enough to get him expelled, where Jace tells this to the academy counselors, and so Viktor gets kicked out. Viktor becomes recently depressed, believing good intentions will get him nowhere, especially to his goals, so he decides to turn himself into a machine, making his mind dedicated to helping improve humanity for the future. The original lore of Viktor is not really great, especially his argument into transforming into a tech priest. It's pretty simplistic because humans are constantly causing accidents, opportunistic and irrational. However, one key concept from the original story does carry over in Arcane, the idea of the human error. Arcane explores this concept in a more nuanced and meaningful way. It delves into humanity, fear of change, as seen through Heimdinger's reluctance to embrace innovation, the frailty of the human body, and how easily susceptible it is to diseases, which hinders progress, and the tendency for tools meant for good to be repurposed as weapons. You can see all his groundwork being set up while still being faithful to the core themes in Viktor's lore, struggling to enact meaningful change but only spiral down to a darker path. Especially since Viktor from League of Legends took a bit of a deep end willingly to conduct surgery upon himself to turn into a robot. It feels like a leap in logic for how simple his arguments were. Arcane also fixes this problem by having Viktor be sick and desperately try to fix his body, willing to alter himself. While he gives this up on Season 1, Season 2 could have this continue, with Jace attempted to save his life by placing a hex core inside Viktor, a decision that will let a powerful emotional response, since he feared he'd end up like Rio, a reflection of himself losing his humanity if he continued this research. Also, the idea of having a dangerous, uncontrollable entity fused within him, you believe the arc would have been focused on Viktor's struggles to keep his powers in check by transforming his body to a machine in order to contain it and prevent it from overtaking him, while dealing with the feelings of betrayal towards Jace. Instead, Viktor's reaction is strangely subdued. He wakes up calm and uninteresting, showing no visible horror or anger at the situation. This lack of emotional response reminds me so much of the problems of Jon Snow with his resurrection. It should be a climactic, emotional moment for the character, but instead the reaction is more like waking up from a nap. Rather than confronting Jace or expressing any sense of betrayal, Viktor simply just walks away, leaving Jace without any real explanation. This feels uncharacteristic for Viktor, who based on his experience will likely push Jace away and attempt to deal with the situation alone, possibly rejecting any offers of help as a result of what Jace has done. This conversation should have been longer and more in depth, where we see their partnership begin to dissolve and Viktor's new direction in life. Having him walking around the streets of Zon using the powers supposedly to cure people and creating a cult is something he wouldn't be doing, well, not yet. He doesn't trust the hex core, especially what it did to Sky, who would have had himself contained in his lab finding a solution. A lot of his time should be invested in exploring Viktor's internal struggle within the device. However, so much of it gets skipped over and is kept vague, where it's not fully understood whether or not the device is manipulating Viktor through Sky. Is he curing people because he wants to, or the device is trying to build an army? The ambiguity is supposedly left to interpretation. However, this lack of clarity is ultimately harmful to Viktor's story. What made Viktor's journey so compelling in Arcane Season 1 was that his motivation and struggles were clearly laid out, allowing the audience to understand his process of becoming the Machine Herald. If the device is fully controlling Viktor, we missed out scenes of how this happened, and we're supposed to assume a lot of his actions are not his own, but manipulated by the device. If this is Viktor's own choices, it seems contradictory what he should be doing. There's crucial information not being told to better understand his character, leaving nothing but problems in the story being left unclear. This direction undermines the very foundation what made Viktor arc so relatable and tragic. What makes it so insulting is that the screen time given to the story being his ascension is being eaten up with the story of him curing Warwick. Now, this wouldn't have been an issue if this series had more time to explore the story, but the fact that it had limited story time, it gets wasted. They should have prioritized more on Viktor, especially how important he becomes in the third arc. This is where somehow, despite not doing much of Viktor's development, we begin to see him unravel and just fall apart as a character. His transformation is a critical moment of his character, but instead of allowing him to conduct the transformation to himself, they have other characters forced him to go down this path to allow Singe to conduct the surgery to transform him. This further removes a lot of agency and personal choice for this direction. It doesn't help that the end result being whatever this thing is. Original design is simple. Machines easily represent the pursuit of perfection and everlasting, tying to both his original lore and Arcane Season 1. This design, I'm not sure what does it even represent. If being a twink, then yes, they succeeded, especially making his older art look more menacing and stoic. Beyond just aesthetic, the human error that motivated him was the concept of passion, where it can lead to both good and evil. I find it strange that this is a climactic realization that he is dying, even though he already knew this with the line in Pursuit of Great, we failed to do good. Even though they could have utilized any other sources of what they were building up in season 1, it's fine despite being weak, similar to his lore, yet somehow they managed to make it worse with this direction. In order to fix the human error in season 2 of Arcane, it's by stripping everything that makes him human, being literally nothing but puppets. Great symbolism. Even though his original lore was not to strip every human emotion but dull them to focus on the more logical side of them, somehow they're making that lore be more nuanced in comparison. Arcane was meant to fix the character, yet they repeat the problems of his original lore, somehow making it worse in comparison. We haven't reached the part that I dread to even talk about being his future self. This is a part of the story that just comes out of nowhere and feels like it relates to nothing I've been talking about, where apparently future Viktor, who was originally meant to be Rise, has been trying to stop himself from destroying the world numerous times by repeating the same methods of giving the Arcane Shard to Kid Jace to allow him to repeat the same timeline. I'm not joking, this is what actually happens in the show. Apparently later, when they're adults, they decide to send him to the future, except Heimerdinger and Echo so they could build the Z drive. While Jace is in an apocalypse setting, instead of just teleporting him where he is or just talks to him upon being there, he had the poor bastard walk to him, almost dying in the process trying to reach the top, only to be told to stop Viktor and send him back to his timeline. I could talk about the obvious question of the can of worms when it comes to time story, of the incredible questionable methods of future Viktor. I think the bigger question overshadows this one being, why are we doing this? How does any of this relate to the simple story of the poor sickly inventor doing his best to help? Now in season 2, he's a time dimension hopping wizard trying to stop his other self from destroying the world. Resuming back to whatever story they're trying to make, Viktor plans to conquer the world, which isn't so much a problem of the character, more in the direction. Since Arcane season 1 was smart enough to unfocus on small scale events, Runeterra is a pretty massive place, involving different characters and events requiring novel length explanations. It's better to contain the story in a small region, slowly introducing the world, especially since Arcane is pretty much restarting the universe. However, this just completely skyrocketed when it came to the scale of the story. Since this level of event requires certain characters who aren't involved being Rise, whose job is to prevent situations like this, and other factions trying to conquer or destroy the world will also get involved. It's the same problem when it comes to Marvel, where they introduce a multiverse threat that could destroy the whole galaxy, and instead of sending the Avengers, the X-Men, or whoever character they can throw at them, they send one guy trying to stop it, being Doctor Strange or Spider-Man, in this case being Jace and a small militia force. The way to stop Viktor has to be the most anticlimactic and stupidest method possible, by having Echo throwing a Z drive at him exploding in his face. Somehow this explosion caused him to have pulse clarity to his action, realizing what he's doing is very evil because it could destroy the world. Just absolutely the dumbest and lame way they could have resolved the conflict. Instead of showing Viktor fighting back the influence of the Arcane, or Jace stopping Viktor with his own hands, they solve the problem like a hammer fixing the screen TV. It pretty much destroys Viktor as a character, where the device could have been manipulating him, or possibly his ambition was blinding him. In other words, his actions weren't truly his, despite being the type of character who knows exactly what he's doing. It doesn't help that this is where the story just ends, where he sacrifices himself, stopping the hex core, and dies. That's it, the story's over, Viktor's dead. But the damage doesn't stop there. This version of Viktor is now the official design in League of Legends, replacing his lore as well. Apparently, they're still keeping the title of the Machine Herald despite his methods, motivation, and design doesn't match any of the original Viktor why he was called the Machine Herald. The damage still continues to other characters that I mentioned before being Blitzcrank, where he was never invented in Arcane, so now his canon is put in limbo. Words cannot express how truly deplorable his treatment was in Season 2. None of his actions throughout the season felt like something the original Viktor would have done. Yet the show stripped so much of his agency, especially barely having any autonomy, to the point he might as well just be a new character, which you can see why many fans call him Vincent. So thanks for watching, and bye.